So I think we're going to start. So yes, thank you to all of you who are here for the Emotional Health and Longevity Mindset session. So this is one of a number of sessions that is taking place at the House of KOKO this weekend, which is all about health, sound, and longevity. And essentially, we've had a few sessions already from this morning that have started. It was quite interesting at the first session, actually, this morning on the new frontier of longevity and the science, how much actually was raised in terms of the questions about the importance of emotional health and psychological health in longevity. So that was great to hear because, of course, this is very much what is going to be at the heart of the session right now for the next hour. And people's backgrounds and biographies myself. I'll let everyone else do that in their own backgrounds and biographies myself. I'll let everyone else do that in their own perspective and introducing themselves as we go along. But we've obviously got a number of people here who are all interfacing in this whole new frontier of longevity in different, I think of, it's kind of this new zeitgeist moment that we're really looking at in the health and wellness space, recognizing some of the things that are really, really dragging the health down of the population in the UK, for example. We know that psychosocial stress and depression, emotional health is actually really becoming such an important issue, especially with our younger populations. You know, it's been the main driver of the workforce and activity crisis is actually mental health issues in the 16 to 24-year-olds. So loneliness, despair, these are all real factors that are actually really gripping a lot more government attention, and I think really does need to enter the longevity debate. Incredible experts who are all doing things in their different in their different areas that really touch all, I think, the major themes and issues that really we should be looking at in the whole health and wellness industry. So I'm going to stop there. I've got a whole bunch of questions that I know I'm going to be keen to ask, but I really want all of you to think about the questions that you want to ask so we can make this more of a conversation and not just a talk. So think about that as we're going along. So I'm going to stop there. And my name is Tina Woods, by the way, and I wear a few hats in longevity and have been very involved in helping pull together this weekend. And just a point, we're also running Longevity Rave this evening. And if you are on the waiting list and you've not yet heard back and you want to come, please talk to me after the session and I will get you on the guest list. So I'll stop there. Over to you, James.
Hey, I'm James Davis. I'm a coaching psychologist and one half of the Midlife Mentors and the other half sitting next to me. So we specialise in midlife health and happiness, and we started that journey quite with their emotional and mental health, I suppose, and navigate andropause, deal with their emotional and mental health, I suppose, and navigate andropause successfully. Been working in this area for a while, kind of driven by my background, my own personal experience, and then running programs for organizations and actually having guys go, well, where is all this information in one place? Male Handbook, A Man's Guide to Thriving Through Andropause. If you don't know what andropause is, ask me afterwards. But yeah, that's me.
Hello, I am one half of the Midlife Mentors too. So we're husband and wife team, and we've been working together for 9-10 years. And husband and wife team, and we've been on wellness retreats over in Ibiza and Marbella. But actually started the Midlife Mentors in 2019 with a podcast called the Midlife Mentors, and that was really because we're midlife ourselves, but we had lots of people coming to our retreats that were not just saying, you know, I don't feel physically very well anymore, but actually mentally, emotionally, spiritually, they were at a real tipping point in their lives. And I think for midlifers, we're talking about young people there, but for midlifers, we actually call it the second adolescence because our hormones through menopause and andropause are massively shifting, which affects our psychology so much, our emotional health. And people get to that point and really feel like they've lost their sense of self-identity. Everything they've been promised doesn't. So they come to us for that kind of level of how do I move through this spiritually, mentally, and physically. So that's why we started the Midlife Mentors, and we go into organisations like Google, Shell, KPMG, and help. We talk a lot about midlife relationships as well, and how the andropause and the menopause really impact that communication at that time of life. So that's us. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Angela. Can you hear me okay? Yes. And after quite a lengthy corporate career, so about 20 years in corporate, I then had another equally lengthy entrepreneurial career, about 20 years in primarily recruitment and training businesses. And we did a lot of work working with young people. And alongside that, we were hearing lots from the government about the GDP going down in the UK compared to the rest of Europe. Our funding and efforts into young people, and so in about 12 hour funding and efforts into young people, and so in about 2018. We launched something in the House of Commons which we called the Limitless Manifesto, and it was about actually recognising there was so much talent in our midlife professionals, and yet lost it because they now were no longer fit and strong as they were, and they didn't necessarily believe that they were going to be. And mentally they were feeling that they were past it as well, because employers didn't want to be hiring people above a certain age, and entrepreneurism, which has become people above a certain age, an area that is really primarily targeted by the young people to start new businesses. And so really it was that, combined with my own sort of experience of getting much fitter in my 50s, that brought us to where we are now. We have a platform called Your Body Means Business, and we work with midlife professionals and help them firstly to get super strong. So that's when we're starting to talk about longevity physically, but also to start to recognize they have a huge amount to offer society. And a part of longevity is to feel that you do matter, that you are relevant, that you are needed, and that you have lots more chapters ahead of you in the world. And so that's what we do. We who they need to be, and to help them to understand that longevity is not about, yes, it's about maybe age reversal, but it's not about going back to where you were. It's about, and it's not even about maintaining where you are. It's about, what's my next chapter? What else can I do in society, and how can I utilize all this great experience I've got to really make a difference?
Hi guys, I'm Yukari. I am the co-founder of Longevity Rave along with Tina. So we started Longevity Rave out of a mutual love for music and the importance of creating human connections on the dance floor. Tina's work obviously is all around the human exposome, so the importance of environmental factors in longevity that can include human connections, relationships, and fostering and connecting with people. And for me personally, raving and dancing is really, really important, and for other people to find a space where you can, for other people to find a space where you can really share your energy with other people on the dance floor, meet other people, connect, and obviously really good for physical and mental health. So we created Longevity Dance Floor to do exactly that, and also to break down a lot of intergenerational barriers. It's very inclusive. It's for everyone and anyone, people who, never, danced, or people who we want to provide a safe, inclusive space for them. And if you guys are going to come to Longevity Rave, you will definitely see what we're all about, and hopefully you guys can also dance and feel the energies and what's really important. And there's obviously like we do that to really kind of make sure that everyone feels safe, and because obviously the raving community can be full of alcohol and other things that make it a bit scary for people who never raved before. So we try to make it that's me. I'm also a DJ, so that's why I DJ and do this Longevity Rave thing. But yeah, hopefully see you guys soon. And yeah, as Tina mentioned, if you want to come, let us know afterwards, and we'll put you on the guest list. Thank you.
Raving is life. Honestly, it's brilliant.
Hi, I'm a raver too, right?
yes. So I'm Marge. I'm a cancer thriver, but in order to be so, I had to go through surgical menopause. That was about 14 years ago. And since then, I've been a campaigner for better menopause awareness, and I think I was probably one of the first on the femtech early days, that scene, who was kind of banging on tech side of things, but that was on the tech side of things. But that was, probably about 10 years ago now, and I just remember being it was a really lonely place at that point, because not only was I a double gynae cancer, I was also a young menopause. I was experiencing menopause so young, and there was no one there. I didn't have any community. My peers just, I didn't have any through what I was going through, and so yeah, there was just no guidance. It's changed now, but I did realise that there is still a need for that support, and so I became a certified menopause doula, and so I support women going through this transition, and as an extra element, I too kind of bring in a bit of the embodied movement to how I support women. So thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Alice. Kindred is a new way to date, built on the belief that meaningful connection deserves to be created with care and is essential to our well-being. I've spent the last 6 years navigating people dating in a world that feels more connected than ever, but even lonelier than it's ever been. What I've seen is that people of all ages are craving real connection, not just romantic connection, but connection built in grounded human approaches. And when this is missing, it doesn't just affect our health, it affects our confidence, it affects our resilience, and the way that we show up in the world. So Kindred was born from a belief that actually meaningful connection deserves to be fostered in an environment where people are feeling safe and heard, and also enjoying it in a space where they build lives with more love in them. And I truly believe that will build lives with more love in them. And I truly believe that the relationships we have in our lives are definitely key to our physical longevity too. So thank you for having me and being part of this conversation.
Thank you, Alice. Yeah, thank you. Your own experiences and obviously what you're doing in the space. What keeps on coming up over and over again is this sense of how much humans need to be in communities, have a sense of connection with others, how much strength in communities, have a sense of from those who are important to us. So I think, and really what came out of this morning's discussion was really landed there. Like, why is it that, for example, areas around the world where, they may not have a lot of resources, they may not have very much, but actually they thrive very, very well as communities? It's because they are part of rich communities that people look after each other. And so I think these are very, very strong messages that came out, and certainly I think come out how much we as humans really need that sort of mutual support, companionship, love in our lives, to nurture us, and to help us grow and to want to live a long life. So I think, one of the questions that I'd like to ask is, it seems pretty obvious that emotional health, psychological health, feeling connected, that sort of resilience piece, why has it taken so long for it to be really recognized? And it's only now that it's, starting to enter the government sort of, debate, and sort of even with the investor sort of hat, that we look at with the longevity, in the longevity industry. Why has it taken so long? And how can we do more to raise attention on this? I'll just pass, whoever wants to go.
Okay, thank you. I think part of the problem is that culturally we just forgot how to do it. We forget the Industrial Revolution wasn't that long ago, that pushed us into a very artificial way of life. We suddenly had timestamps, 9 to 5 day. These are all inventions to fit factory living. Before that, we had centuries and centuries of communities being very interdependent on each other. They would have all been out to do the harvest, bring the harvest in. If someone was struggling, they'd help them out. And I think digital technology has only accelerated that surge, really. And I think digital technology has only accelerated that surge, really. So I don't think it's not recognised. I think we've just forgotten it somewhere along the way. But I think it's great that we are now starting to appreciate that, maybe we did lose something along the way here, and we need to pick it up again. So I think it's about, maybe we should drop the social part. Maybe it should be anti-social media, because it certainly seems to create more barriers than inclusiveness.
Yeah, and I also think this, we always say the comparison is the thief of joy. And maybe that whole, with social comparison is the thief of joy, and people's highlight reels quite a lot, and that sense of having to be more perfect, maybe that's it as well. It's kind of like we see everyone's highlight reels, everyone's perfect lives, and maybe we have been less inclined to put ourselves out there because we don't feel perfect, we don't feel enough. But I think I agree with James. It's not that, it's just that we have forgotten, and I think it's really been ramped up by COVID. I think what happened there when we were all locked down, we didn't have access to other people, and there were some studies around that, what loneliness did to people's mental health, their emotional health as well. But yeah, I just think we are seeing it in the younger generations. We're seeing it in our generations as well. But everywhere you look, people are in their own little shells. You walk along the road and people are bumping into you because they're not even looking where they're going. You see young children as young as 2 years old on their phone. I think we're just starting to clock that, become aware of it. I think, hang on a minute, how is this affecting the generation to come? And there's loads of neuroscience obviously coming out now around how it's impacting our neural pathways.
Absolutely. Angela, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say as well that culturally, social isolation has come from the fact that many more people are living on their own now than they were before. You know, before we were part of extended families not that long ago, but so many people, if they don't have a job, or if they don't have a job, or if they don't have a business which necessitates them to interact with other people, then it won't happen. And then, as I said, they will start to feel insignificant, irrelevant, and that they don't matter, which is really very dangerous. And we see the increases in suicide, and there's a whole variety of sort of social issues as a result of this. So we started to think that women can have it all, and that they can do everything. So we started to think that women can have it all, and that we've got increase in divorce rates and increase in single homes, etc., etc. And all of this is sort of just coming to fruition, I think, now.
Absolutely, and I'm going to hand over in a second, but I think there's something very, very interesting. I mean, if I go back, when I was in my 20s, I mean, I came to London, no one had phones. Literally no one had phones. And you really rely on the randomness of life to kind of connect you, which we've completely lost in this new digital age when everything is so much more ordered and driven by algorithms, et cetera, et cetera. So I do think that's really interesting, and just relating that to, for example, how Carrie and I first met. We literally met on the dance floor, and it was the energy that brought us together. It was nothing more than that, except we had this. So from a science point of view, I'm really interested in that whole concept of the energy and the aura of what humans emit and give off, and what we respond to, which you cannot get by an algorithm or a screen. So I don't know if you want to comment on that. I'm looking at Alice here, and also Marge and you, Carrie, but.
So, Tina, just getting back on your first point on why there's such a divide between people, and why, emotional health is being undermined, I think there's also a factor in terms of young people and old people, or older generations. There's a separation. There's not a lot of, overlap between, because for young people, for us, mental health is being talked about more, and it's a very relevant topic. But we don't really have the chance to share that with people. For example, for me, sharing that with my parents, or older generation, it's really important to break down those intergenerational barriers, and it's really important to break down those intergenerational barriers and have more open discussions between different generations and different communities to really understand why young people are feeling these things, and how can people who have the power to make change listen to us. So I think, there's an element of, again, putting those two communities and people together.
Absolutely. Marge and Alice, do you want to?
Yeah,
Absolutely. Marge.
all the panelists here, but there's also the extra element with my menopause hat on, where a lot of my clients, they say, I just feel invisible. When you reach a certain age, you just become invisible. And it's that narrative that kind of plays through. Our you go along to your GP, and those symptoms or whatever you're going through is just it's an inconvenience. And so there's that layer on top of sort of 30, 25 years, but there's always been that kind of understanding of well, she's not any more relevant.
Oh gosh, I mean, yes, and I, I know that's a very, very well established feeling that a lot of women,
Yeah.
after they hit a certain age, they do feel that,
Yeah.
and that of course creates a lack of confidence, and then the implosion that
Yeah.
can often happen.
And we kind of gaslight ourselves as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know, show of hands, you go along, you ask your older female relatives, how did you go through menopause? Or how did you feel going through, most of the time, quite a few of, most of the time, our, mothers and grandmothers say, oh, well, I just, kept calm and carrying on, kept calm and carry on, dear, And so that silence is internalized, isn't it? So, yeah.
So I think this whole issue around throughout life and sort of feeling at peace with who you are is something throughout life, and sort of feeling at peace with who you are is something that is part of the journey of life. And I think the menopause is absolutely a trigger point for some of that to come to a head. But Alice, what would you say about the confidence building?
I think traditionally mental health has been looked at as a very physical lens. And actually, we haven't had a full understanding of what mental health means. And so when someone's struggling through something, we're very British in the sense that we don't open up or talk about it. So people, when they're in the sense that we don't open up menopause or divorce or burnout, you actually have to relearn how to connect with individuals and then yourself too. And so that's where the change will be, is in the slower pace of things. But yeah, that's just to kind of add on to all of the good points there.
So absolutely. And so I'm going to turn to James and Claire here, just to get a sense in terms of what are some of the main reasons that couples come to you. Because often I know, and I experience this myself, you're going, you hit your 50s, and then of course your kids start leaving home, and then of course you're going through the menopause, and all these big life events happen, and then suddenly you're like maybe left alone with your partner again after having been so focused with children. And the reasons, and how do you sort of help couples through that whole sort of process?
It's a really good question. I think that whole menopause and andropause point in our lives, I said it was that second adolescence. It can feel that confusing and that discombobulating. I love that word. But it can feel that the woman is going through the menopause, the man's going through the andropause. And I suppose it's that breakdown of communication, really. And also what we find a lot is that if you've been with someone for a while, we presume so much about that person. Like the person that I was even 5 years ago is extraordinarily different to the person I am now. Same with James. But I think we make so many presumptions about what that person is thinking and feeling in our relationships, and then you throw in the hormones as well. So I think a lot of the time what we see with clients is they're going in two different directions. And I suppose for us it's just really on physiologically, because I think that's what we can connect with. We're like, okay, I'm physiologically, because I think that's what we can connect with. We're like, okay, I'm not just going completely mad. There's an actual reason for what I'm experiencing emotionally as well. So once you've explained that, then it's really about giving tools and we very much do this. We blame other people sometimes, don't we, for what we're experiencing. But it's also good to be armed with the information about what's going on for me, then to have some self-awareness. And one of the things I would say all the time is we just encourage, am I projecting, am I assuming? But also to be curious. Be curious. You've grown, you've changed, and that other person has grown and changed as well. So I know James will definitely have something to add there, but I would just say really be curious.
Quick word, James, and I'm going to ask Angela a question, and then I'm going to open up questions to the audience. So think of some questions.
Yeah, I was going to say that kind of overlaying all that kind of hormonal neurotransmitter confusion at this time of life are those psychological pressures you mentioned. And I think we can probably sum this up by like that questioning our self-identity.
Mm-hmm.
Like we've normally had it quite defined, but then we reach this point of our lives where the children have left home, maybe we're looking after aging parents, maybe we're made redundant or changing career, and it's something, what are my values now, and where do I want to be, and who do I want to be going forward?
So Absolutely. And so I'm going to ask Angela a question, which is really about, let's face it, we're all on a journey through life, figuring out who we are and actually learning how to be really comfortable with who you are and finding joy and purpose. And this is actually part of life, right? And sometimes it's really difficult. But Angela, I know a lot of the work that you do and the coaching that you do, I mean, the whole mindset. How do we get ourselves in the right mindset? To realize that something is wrong, but then to feel empowered to be able to do something about it, either through your own resources or through the power of people around you. How do you counsel people who you spend time with on this point?
I think what you've just said about empowering them with information is the first thing, getting them to, so if someone comes along and we have this platform, Your Body Means Business. So we may have a client that approaches us, they're very successful in the corporate world, but they've got body fat, especially women. They're very equally. You'll get someone who they feel stuck in their career. You'll get someone who they feel stuck in their career. They want to move. So they'll come from different directions, but it's all really very much connected in mindset. And the first step is to get people to believe that they can change whatever is happening. They can change them. And it's quite interesting what you're saying, Yuki, about older people should have the answers. Very often I think there is a shock that they just don't have the answers, and they thought they would have by now, and then they don't. I think the is to teach them about longevity, not just in terms of sort of the biological longevity, but also about really their mindset and believing that this is possible. And how do they do that? Well, it's about the people that they're spending time with, coming to events like this, talking to people that are like-minded. What is the information that they're consuming? Are they reading stuff that tells them that everybody should be retiring at 60 or 65 and then just go on a state pension and be poor, or are they actually looking at examples of people that are starting new businesses and being really super successful in their 70s and 80s and 90s? Are they actually learning about advancements in science and understanding that they say, no, they don't want to live beyond 100. And the reason they don't is because they have this image that they'll be, incapacitated at that point. Well, when you ask them, okay, but if you actually feel like you feel now, would you like to live beyond 100? Of course, they'll say yes. So a lot of this is, so are they empowered with the information? Are they spending time with people that also believe in longevity? Are they guarding their mind, the garden of their mind, as we call it, to make sure that they're open to possibilities. And then, once they've changed their mindset, then we can give them all sorts of strategies, and those strategies will work just as they did when we were 20 and 25 years old. There's no sort of magic at that point. But, we can be, our worst enemy if we don't believe that something's capable. If we think we can't sort of thing,
And I think what Claire said also about curiosity is also really important, and that learning is also part of this journey. So I'm going to ask, is there anyone in the audience who would like to ask? Anyone have a burning question? You sure? Does anyone have a burning question? You sure? Okay. So, but, oh, sorry.
It was about kindred.
Could you try again?
How, in terms of how do we operate? What do you mean how?
What's the flip in terms of how you presented some challenges around internally isolated and it being all about what you look like?
Yeah, of course.
What's the
So,
point into meaningful?
yeah, so we meet all our clients, so that's first and foremost. We get to know them as we would friends, and then aim to put them in places that their friends would have hosted them anyway. And if someone's feeling comfortable with my team and me, and then being in a place where they'd want to go anyway, with people that they'd want to be with anyway too, it fosters this sense of community that James mentioned we're missing. It's kind of like the village feeling again. And if you have that, then the perform, sometimes on a first date or in a first person interaction, then that slowly slips away and you just become. So yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Another question?
Thanks everyone. A few of you mentioned the British culture and talk a lot about the tall poppy syndrome and just repression that kind of underpins a lot of interactions, especially when you come to dating and career changes and putting ourselves out there. If you could do one thing today with your community to change the needle, to make Brits a bit more American, maybe, what would you do? Or maybe not American.
Like to go first?
I'd get them to dream again a little bit more. You know, for us, what we see is, and for us, what we see is, and you might have seen this in the work that you do, we become more risk averse as we get older. So when we're younger, we play to win. But what we say is when we get to a certain age, we play not to lose, like all the stuff that our and our shell. But that also it makes us lose our confidence slightly. And then I would say that imposter syndrome, to try something new, to try something different, to take a risk, actually, you know, it gets bigger because it's outside their comfort. You know, it gets bigger to a certain age. We don't like going outside our comfort zone so much. So I would say with someone that's got that tall poppy syndrome, first of all, actually, I would get them to dream, but then I'd ask them to go back over their past and think about all the things that they have achieved and all the amazing things that have happened to them. Because again, a lot of the time we can focus on the things that we haven't achieved, the things that haven't gone right, rather than they have a lot to offer. They have had many successes, and actually that it's okay and it's safe to dream. And what's the next little step that they could take towards trying something new in their life to open up that sense of opportunity and possibility?
So interesting, and I think there's a bigger point, and the American sort of British connection too. The fear of failure is much starker here than it is in many other places. So, and all I would say is that, and going back to the point about curiosity, you start getting old when you stop showing an interest or stop learning or showing that curiosity to try new stuff, right? And you get in your groove and you get stuck, right? So that is a very, very clear symptom of getting older. And I think, and that comes back down to the longevity mindset and being open to new possibilities and so forth. So I think there's a huge amount there that can be really explored, and I think is the new frontier of longevity that really needs a lot more attention, is how do you actually inspire and get people to basic stuff that could really, drive impact with your health. And of course, when you have your health, you've got basic stuff that could really, drive impact with your health. And of course, when you have your health, you've got your vitality, your energy, and it all kind of spirals on from there. But so Angela, you wanted to say something on that point?
Yeah, I was just going to say that there's an interesting experiment that I do sometimes when I speak to people, get right from the very beginning, and they'll start to talk about, well, I think I'd get up at this time and they'll do this and I'd do that. And once they've finished, I say, well, how about doing that tomorrow? And they sort of look almost as if you've just given them permission, and then they do it, and it can be sometimes, and you've just given them permission, think and dream, and I do agree with that. But sometimes it's the other way. It's don't overthink, decide on a few steps and just do them and just take some action. So some people at different stages, but very often it's almost you give someone permission to do something that they thought they couldn't do anymore, like create a reel on Instagram or, whatever it might be. They just think it's for other people and not for them.
You, Carrie, Marge, Alice, do you want to?
All I would just say is slow down as well. I think in London we all live at incredibly fast-paced lives, and I know I have the tendency to say yes to every single thing that happens in my life, but actually the ability to have free do in that aspect too, I think it makes you more emotional, because when you are present, you want to be there too. So the ability to slow down and look inward is massive there as well.
Yeah, I was also just going to say, just relax and chill. Not everything has to be perfect. Not everything, has to fit a certain way or look a certain way. So I'm not British nor American. I'm actually Japanese. And I come from a culture and society which is even more, closed, and everyone is very, hyper-focused on work and, routine and doing things right and fitting and conforming to a certain standard. And I think that puts a lot of pressure on individuals, not just for mentally, but also, on the point of about curiosity. People are afraid to try new things because new things aren't really encouraged, or people aren't really encouraged to be curious in a society like that. So I think you can try things, you can fail at things, just relax. You can try things, you can fail at things, just relax, do new things, and be more confident and comfortable in yourself and other people.
I I agree with all of these, of course, but I think time. There's not enough time to dream, and there's not enough time. So perhaps carving out a couple of hours in your week where you actually throw out that horrible old to-do list, which never gets done. You throw out that horrible. And so, what would you do without that to-do list? For that half day, what would you like to explore? Being curious and leaning into that.
So I also think there's a role of, if I can speak to some personal experiences myself, there is a very interesting role of serendipity in all this, being open to new experiences, which you wouldn't normally have counted on or expected or anything like that, because it was literally, and these can really change your life. And I think this is actually really important in terms of this new digital age, which everything is so controlled, and you think but actually it prevents a lot of these opportunities from happening when you're not going about in the real world. It was through it with some girlfriends one night, and it was like almost like a spiritual awakening moment for me, that I was like, oh my God, I feel so amazing doing this, right? And I said, I'm gonna have to do more. And it was like literally, like it felt so great. My mind, body, and soul came together. And that was the moment that I then started doing more dance and getting much more interested in music. And then, of course, it's led down this whole different path in my life, which I would never have expected. So I think that kind of, that this is life, these are these moments in life that we shouldn't close ourselves off from, which is, and I think that has been part of the problem. And I've got, 3 sons, one of whom is here in their mid-20s, and I kind of feel we've been in this giant sort of, fishbowl experiment, and we're seeing, yes, some of the positive aspects. I mean, I remember I was able to have a teleconference in the car, anywhere that I wanted, while I had a kid in the, sleeping in the back. That was great, right? But then, of course, but I think a lot of it does come down to just letting life happen. But I think a lot of it does come down to just letting life happen, to your point about being relaxed and being on the receiving end. I mean, I was at a session just before where I literally let myself do this ecstatic dance and guided breath work and all this sort of stuff, and this is the moment I think that's really hitting society, is all of this that we're talking about, which just needs to be much more recognized and accepted and taken seriously. So any more questions? So any more?
Thank you. I have a 19-year-old sister. We have 15 years between us. So I empathize with a lot of things that was said. I also get distracted by algorithms, everything. I struggle to slow down, to dream, etc. But I've observed something different in her, to be honest. And she might be an outlier, obviously. I think there are definitely downsides, especially in teenagers, to using social media, especially in girls. But are there things that you've seen in your practice that newer generation does different to enjoy time, and we're not comfortable with this new framework that we have to live in? They actually grew up in that, and they've sort of adapted and found their way in it. My sister often doesn't leave her room, and she's super happy with her a few friends online, and I wouldn't be happy, but she is. So yeah, would love to hear your thoughts on that.
One thing I was going to say is that we're guaranteed that things are going to change all the time, and she's very comfortable at the moment. And then, I've got a daughter of 31, and I see everybody go through their stages where they're incredibly proficient at the latest technology, etc. And then all of a sudden, another generation comes up behind them, and it's a different type of technology. Just using that as an example, I think one of the things that's important in terms of a longevity change, and to the fact that everything is going to change all the time, change, and to the fact that everything is going to change all the time. You know, businesses, every single business is going to have a lifetime, just like a person, and then it will finish. Every single career has a, you know, a start, a middle, and an end. That doesn't mean to say because if you're doing that's you. It's just something that you are doing at this point in time. And I think, you know, longevity isn't, as we know, as we've spoken about today, it's not just about how we look and how we feel and how energetic we are, and what we're doing. It's about just being open to change all of and what we're doing. She's in this wonderful period where everything's changing. She's very open to it. She's expecting at 19 that she's going to learn new things. But I think realizing that actually at 40, you're going to learn new things rather than being devastated by that because you thought you were always going to be a lawyer or whatever, is a really good thing. And then again at 60, and then again at 70 and 80. So just staying open to change, I think, is really critical.
Any other comments?
I suppose in some way, I mean, maybe, you know, as a Gen X, I'm prone to judging my daughter who's 11 and also enjoys being online with her friends. I mean, you know, but that is one part. That's one kind of community. As long as she's got that, that's a community that she can lean into. Although she loves also being in real life and going on play dates and all the parties. And I mean, she's a mini raver as well, you know. So you know. But yeah, she's still, as long as people still have a connection on whatever level, it's still important.
I mean, I think you said that from what you're seeing, she seems happy.
She's actually unhappy if she's forced to leave the room.
Okay, so there may be some other issues around that, but I think, you know, I mean, it's an interesting question because it's almost like, what do you not know about the outside world that perhaps insulates you? So there's all these other things that are probably potentially at work. So
I painted a bit exaggerated picture. It's not
Yeah.
that being a problem.
Yeah.
They grew up with it. Like,
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
about being a problem.
Yeah.
They grew up with it. Like,
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
about reading on digital screens. I struggle with it. I prefer books.
Mm-hmm.
And my sister
Yeah.
grew up with screens. She prefers screens.
Yeah.
So if I forced my world on her, she would actually be worse.
I ask another question. Any other questions from anybody? No? Okay. Oh, yes.
Reinforce what Angela said
Yes.
about the importance to be open to change.
Yes.
With superintelligence and importance to be open to velocity coming in the next 5 years, it's absolutely critical at a government level and an individual level that we get very ready and open to being open to change because it's going to happen at such a fast rate.
So I'm going to ask, I guess, a slightly controversial and kind of a sort of philosophical question. What kind of values and principles as a society should we be governed by in this age of fast developing technologies, which, let's face it, at the moment is dominated by big tech? How are we actually going to navigate and make sure that the principles and the things that keep us humans happiest are about connection, community, sense of belonging, values that we all need to thrive? How are we going to make sure that that is protected, and how are we going to make sure that governments and big companies and all the rest of it? So it's quite a big question, but I think it's quite a fundamental question, learning from what we have just seen in the last 20 years since, you know, I did the first Google search, 25 years ago when my youngest son was 1. And things have profoundly changed and not necessarily all for the good. So any comments about that? I know it's a pretty big, broad societal question, but I think it's a really fundamental question.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily have all the answers at all. Well, I don't have necessarily any of the answers, but I do think that we need to take personal... You're saying that about a government perspective. I suppose I have maybe a bit of a cynical view about how much the individual, when we group together, absolutely we can make change and we can protect that sense of being ourselves. I think how we do that ourselves. I think absolutely making sure that we create things like Kindred where we're saying, no, actually we want to come off apps, we want to have more in-person connection, community, spiritual. The most important thing is love, right? And actually I think some of us have forgotten how to even love ourselves. So it's actually that sense of coming back to ourselves, whatever brings that that sense of coming back to it within ourselves, with other people. For me, it's my faith. I find myself very rooted and grounded in that. That's changed my life in the sense of I'm not always looking outside for other things to make me feel okay. I have that within me now. And I think maybe talking more about that more openly, what that looks like for every individual, everyone's completely different, but what that looks like for you to help you feel safe and secure in your environment, because everything is going to change. Everything around you is going to change constantly. So how can you stay grounded and secure and safe in yourself?
I see a lot of people
I was going to say that, obviously it is a concern that what are the jobs, going back to my area of expertise, but what are the jobs and careers and business areas that are going to give the most opportunities in the future? I mean, we just don't know. And don't forget, if we're all going to live longer, healthier lives, we do have to pay for it, and money has to come from somewhere. So, what are we going to be doing? So I think that's quite a lot of concern for people that are sort of looking into this. But rather than being concerned about it, I mean, I just think we just have to stay open to opportunities. One of the things, as far as we know, is that we're going to still continue to have children, and so from that parental connection, so love and that parental connection. So it's our responsibility as as parents to engender the sort of things that you've mentioned, and to support our children and build communities. I do think I was working with a housing company a while back, their business. And what did it mean? Well, it meant that maybe that they are going to start to build houses with more bedrooms and more bathrooms, because more families are going to be ending up living together. Maybe they're going to have to look at maybe they're going to have to look more sustainable, because those buildings are going to have to stand up for longer. There's lots of things like that just not just individuals but businesses have to think about in terms of longevity as well. So I feel sort of really hopeful, and we could all sort of really worry about it, but there's just no point really, is there?
So, any other comments before I ask a final question? Yeah.
Hi, I just also want to add that there's a big element of making sure that, culture, music, and art, and all of these things that, technology can't replace, these things to be, valued, and how important and how it is just to, enrich your life and meet and can't be replaced by anything. Yeah, I think that's really important as well.
And I think this whole weekend, as we're seeing in the program events, and Julianne's here, and it's a fantastic program of events, I think what we're finding is just how important things like music and art and, bringing people together, it is so important, for our general sense of well-being and happiness and joy. And I think this is at the heart of it. And I think, so I often talk about the bubble of bliss. I talk about it in my own family a lot. It comes from the people around us, and the joy and the support that we can get from people around us that can protect us from what we may consider really negative threats and external threats. I mean, when you listen to the news every day, I mean, it's hard, to listen to this all the time. So I think it comes down to that community element, doesn't it? A lot of this down. So I'm going to ask, is there any more questions before I ask the final question of the panelists? No. So I'm going to ask just for your own mental health. I'm just going to go around to everyone. For your own mental health. I'm just going to go around to everyone. James, I'm going to put you on the spot first.
I can't really say one thing. I put it under the umbrella of personal health, but including that physical and mental. So, exercise, spiritual and psychological practice as well. And I think we're just rediscovering really how interconnected we are as beings, and how we need a truly holistic approach. There's been a lot of focus, I think, in the Western world on, just fix one thing, without looking at the personal world on, just umbrella of personal health.
Yeah. I mean, I would say the same. It's that holistic approach. It's looking after myself physically, looking after kind of what I eat. But for me, that spiritual element, every morning sitting in prayer, sitting in meditation, it's, for me, that has been the one thing over the last couple of years that has completely transformed my mental well-being.
Angela?
Yeah, similar, really. Moving my body. That's the main thing. If I have to pick one thing, it's all of these great things. But exercise and feeling so blessed at being fit and strong and able to do things, and being really, really grateful that we get to actually use our body and we get to lift heavy things.
For me, it's definitely music and dancing, and raving is a big part. Not only does it, I walk like 50K steps a day in like two days when I rave. It makes me feel extremely free. It's a freedom of my expression, who I am as a person, my sexuality, all of these things are released through dancing, and it's a big part of my motivation to wake up and live every day. I think it's a really important because it makes me feel connected within myself. So definitely, and linking back to my previous comment on how important creativity is, music and making music, mixing music, all of these things are really, they enrich my boring daily work life too. So yeah, I think those two, music and dance for me.
I love that. I love that. For me, I'm very lucky to have. I've been very lucky to have found, women who are like-minded, very different, but like-minded, and just always finding friendships in somewhere. We can rage together, we can celebrate each other. It's so damn good for your mental health. And I don't have a therapist. These women around me are my therapists, and they just therapists all kind of witness the 360 degrees of of ourselves, and that reflects back to you. So yeah, that's my hack.
And Alice?
Mine would probably be nurturing the relationships that I have in my life and not getting too carried away with what's going on in my life. I think it's really important to notice the qualities of your good friends and family and loved ones, and B, really strive to kind of match their energy and be there for them. That's where I get a lot of what I do and what I love from. So yeah, just taking care of the people around you, and yeah.
So all of you have said something that also resonates completely with me. I think being so grateful for your relationships and also your health, and to be able to do things that you love to do. And for me, it's, yes, that feeling of aliveness that I do get through movement, exercise, and of course music and dancing and raving, and with you, Carrie, so we can do that for a long time.
Can I also say little fluffy doggies
yes.
as well? I
Oh,
can't miss
fluffy
out
doggies.
those.
Well, we all have our special things that matter to us. So I think, but it comes down to all the things that give us joy and happiness, doesn't it? So thank you so much for being here and for being part of this conversation. And yes, I hope we'll see you later on at the other events throughout the weekend. The rave tonight, there's a lot going on. So yes, so thank you. And thank you to my panelists.
Thank you, Tina. Inviting everyone to join us in the piano room, where Rosie Chan and Boniface also is going to perform brought his crystal balls. Please join us. It's very special, and I think Boniface has to leave at some point soon, so he may not be able to give us a lot of time. But